Amanda watched as her father-in-law's face turned an unnatural shade of red, his hand trembling as he set down the wineglass, her wineglass. Across the table, her mother-in-law smiled too quickly, eyes flickering with something that didn't match the polite conversation echoing around them. Seconds ticked by like thunder before Harold excused himself, stumbling toward the hallway as Amanda rose, not with panic, but with purpose. She already knew what she'd find in that bottle. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The kitchen was warm with cinnamon and cloves, but Amanda felt cold. Not the kind of cold you get from a drafty window or an open fridge. This chill started at the base of her spine and clawed its way up. Her hands were steady as they crimped the edges of the tart, but her stomach twisted with the weight of something unspoken, something building. Barbara's laughter chimed from the other room like crystal cracking under pressure. Amanda didn't look up. She could already picture her mother-in-law perched at the head of the dining table, legs crossed too tightly, one manicured hand clutching a wine glass like it was an accessory and a weapon. Barbara always brought her own wine. "Your selection is fine," she'd say, smiling with her teeth, not her eyes. Tonight was no exception. A chilled bottle of something French and condescending sat on the counter, unopened until moments ago. Amanda had spent 10 years learning to read Barbara's small tells. The twitch at the corner of her eye when Amanda spoke too long, the way her fingers tightened around her fork when James complimented his wife. But this was different. She had just set the turkey to rest when she heard the unmistakable clink of glass behind her. Turning silently, Amanda stood in the doorway to the kitchen and watched. Barbara was speaking low under her breath. No one else was in the room, and pouring wine from her personal bottle into one of the identical stemless glasses Amanda had arranged on the silver tray. Her hand hovered over a small pouch in her purse for a second too long. Amanda stepped forward, not making a sound. Barbara spun around, the bottle still in hand, eyes wide before snapping into their usual mask of elegance. "Oh, I was just helping. Thought I'd spare you one more step," Barbara said, placing the glass neatly on the tray as if it hadn't just been the setting for something sinister. Amanda's face betrayed nothing. "Thank you," she said coolly. So thoughtful. But her heart was slamming like a hammer inside a locked drawer. She reached for the glass, her glass, and lifted it with both hands, forcing her lips into something neutral. Barbara's gaze followed every movement. Amanda held her stare a beat longer than necessary, then turned away. Once out of sight, she walked calmly to the kitchen island, where Harold's wineglass still waited beside a dish of cranberry sauce. She moved the glasses with a practiced sleight of hand, swapped them so neatly even she had to double-check. A breath held. A breath released. Then, like nothing had happened at all, she carried the tray into the dining room and waited. The turkey's skin cracked under the carving knife, its juices pooling beneath the slices like melted gold. James smiled as he filled plates, offering drumsticks and stuffing, unaware that the dinner's warmth had already started to curdle. Harold took his first sip of wine just as the cranberry sauce made it to the table. Amanda watched, her own fork suspended above the mashed potatoes, eyes fixed on his throat as it bobbed with the swallow. The effect wasn't immediate. That's what made it worse. He chuckled at a joke about green bean casserole, then wiped his brow once, twice, as if the heat had risen too fast. Amanda noticed the flush creeping up his neck like spilled ink. A dry cough broke the rhythm of conversation, drawing attention like a dropped dish. Heads turned. Harold waved a dismissive hand, but his smile looked borrowed, not lived in. "Think I just need a minute," he said hoarsely, already pushing back his chair. He moved with the awkwardness of a man trying not to look like he's falling. Barbara's voice piped up too quickly. Maybe something didn't agree with you, dear? But her eyes never left Amanda. There was a question behind them, or perhaps an accusation. Amanda didn't blink. She met Barbara's stare with unnerving calm, her lips pressed into a polite smile so still it felt etched in porcelain. A performance, yes, but a good one. She'd had years of practice. 15 minutes ticked by like a metronome in a quiet room. The sound of forks scraping plates was now undercut with unease. Amanda rose slowly, murmured something about checking on him, and slipped away from the dining room's forced warmth. The hallway felt colder, heavier. She found Harold slumped against the tiled wall in the downstairs bathroom, his shirt damp with sweat, his eyes glassy and unfocused. "You okay?" she asked, crouching down. He looked at her, blinking slowly. "Think maybe a bug," he mumbled. "Dizzy, nauseous, strange." Amanda nodded, her expression soft, but inside her brain was stitching facts together at a dangerous speed. This wasn't a stomach bug. This wasn't food poisoning. She stepped away and headed for the kitchen. The bottle was still there. Barbara's wine. Amanda uncorked it and brought it close. The scent hit her immediately, faint, chemical, with an almond edge that had no place in Sauvignon Blanc. She recoiled. Sleeping pills. Ground fine enough to vanish into liquid. Enough to incapacitate, not kill, but enough to terrify. Amanda stood motionless for a moment, the bottle in her hand, pulse pounding like a war drum. Then she turned, eyes catching the shadow at the hallway's edge. Barbara, half hidden, watching. Gone was the matriarchal grace. Barbara's face was pale, lips drawn tight, hands clenched. Amanda felt her breath grow sharper, colder. This wasn't bitterness anymore. This was war. The decision not to go to the police wasn't hesitation. It was strategy. Amanda understood something Barbara never had. Timing is everything. A police report would be messy, speculative. Worse, it would shift the narrative away from where Amanda wanted it. Barbara, stripped bare by her own pride. So Amanda became meticulous. She took the wine bottle while the others were distracted with Harold, slid it into a large Ziploc bag, sealed it with hands that didn't tremble, and buried it in the bottom of a locked storage bin in the garage behind Christmas decorations no one had touched in years. Evidence, but not ammunition. Not yet. The next morning she recharged her phone, cleaned out every unnecessary file, and tested the voice memo app 3 times. Then, with surgical intent, she placed it in the pantry at Barbara's house during a casual drop-by. She knew the setup, the location where Barbara had done her pouring, the angle of her back to the kitchen entrance. The acoustics would be tight, the shelf height perfect. She left the phone recording with the screen off and returned 2 hours later with an excuse about forgetting her scarf. The recording, 97 minutes, caught nothing conclusive. Yet. But Amanda wasn't done. 2 days later, she called Barbara. Her tone was subdued, a blend of tension and artificial vulnerability. "I don't want things to be weird between us," she said, voice gently cracking. "Can we talk? Just us?" Barbara invited her over with the sugary sweetness of a wasp nesting in a bouquet. Amanda arrived dressed simply, nothing too polished, nothing that read as theatrical. The living room still smelled faintly of her lavender candles and judgment. They sat over peppermint tea in silence until Amanda spoke first. "I think James and I are growing apart," she said, staring into her cup. "I don't know if I belong in this family anymore. I might spend the holidays alone this year." Barbara's eyes flicked up like a hawk spotting prey. "Well," she said, her voice low, coiled, "I told you long ago. James was never meant to end up with someone like you." Amanda kept her expression blank, but her pulse thudded once in her neck. She set her cup down with care. "Is that why you tried to drug me?" Barbara blinked. The mask cracked just for a second. Then silence. No denial. No outrage. Just stillness. The audio recorder in Amanda's jacket pocket captured every syllable of that pause. Silence, when you know someone is guilty, is louder than any confession. James read the email 3 times before moving. The subject line had no sender, no signature, just 3 lines of text and 2 attachments. First, the photo. His mother's favorite wine bottle, the label clear, uncorked, half full. Then the audio, grainy but unmistakable. Her voice, sharpened with disdain, slicing through silence like a blade. James was never meant to end up with someone like you. And then, nothing. No denial, not a single syllable to suggest innocence, just the damning weight of silence. He didn't call Amanda. He didn't call anyone. He sat in his office, blinds drawn, the cursor blinking at the end of the email, as if waiting for him to make sense of it. All those years of defending Barbara, of chalking things up to just how she is. All the excuses collapsed like paper walls under floodwater. When he confronted her, Barbara didn't deny it. Not really. She danced around it, called Amanda fragile, said emotions were high, tried to pivot blame without ever answering the question. But James kept circling back. What did you put in the wine? Her face, pale but resolute, cracked at the edges. When Harold overheard, his reaction was even colder. She tried to drug Amanda? He asked, stepping into the hallway like a man who had walked into a wrong house. That wine was mine. She poured it for me. Barbara said nothing. That night, Harold packed a single overnight bag and left without looking back. 34 years of marriage, erased in the span of 3 sentences. By Monday, word had started to seep into the edges of their community like dye in water. Not a flood, but a quiet stain. The whispers didn't stop at the neighborhood association or the bridge club. They trickled into the sanctuary of Sunday services, into the grocery aisles and quiet luncheons Barbara once ruled, with her practiced smile and sharpened etiquette. The charming matriarch was no more. She became a cautionary tale, a story told in hushed voices between sips of coffee. Eyes narrowed in shared disbelief. Amanda said nothing. She didn't need to. On Wednesday, she finally baked her pumpkin tart, brushed its golden crust with maple glaze, and brought it to the table she now sat at alone, but not empty. Each bite was warm, sweet, silent. It tasted like closure. Because justice doesn't always arrive with sirens or applause. Sometimes it comes wrapped in stillness, unfolding gently, irrevocably, like a secret the world was always meant to hear.